All right. Hi, Pamela.
Hey, Megan.
Impromptu interview as I head out of town. Thanks for. This is very awkward. We're going to cut all this.
Very awkward.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we might not end up using this at all.
Okay.
And we're just going to ignore it. And this means I don't
Start
have to write
talking.
everything down. Okay. So I was wondering, we've talked a lot about things that you do now, but I don't know what the first thing is that you ever wrote.
The first thing I ever wrote was a 20,000 word original, very, very autobiographical version of Leaving Annalise. I did it on basically a dare from Eric while he was in India, and it was a way to keep from writing a real book. And he came home from India, and I presented him with this funny, rough, sucky, totally us work of crap, and he loved it and kept pushing. But that was the first thing.
How many drafts did that go through then until it was finished?
It's even hard to count, because you work with it, and it could be 100 times that you fiddle with it. Major rewrites, probably 10, before it became something.
So you don't necessarily start at the beginning, work all the way through, and then call that a draft. You're kind of working throughout.
Not back then. I didn't.
Yeah.
Back then, I had that disease that everybody seems to get, where you write a chapter and then you obsess.
Yeah.
And then you write another chapter and go back and obsess about the first chapter. And it took me through finishing what I consider to be, maybe about the third draft of what was called Leaving Annalise then drafting Going for Kona, and then finally coming to what became Finding Harmony. And it was on Finding Harmony that the switch tripped. And I went from being an obsessor and a back and forther to I'm going to outline this, I'm going to do it sequentially, I'm going to go from beginning to end, and then I'm going to go back and start working with it. And it worked much better.
Was that just to save your sanity? Or because you knew better at that point?
It was all of the above, if you count one more thing, and that was the books weren't good. And I felt like that by having an organized mind, that I could put the pieces of an organized book together, and in the end, who wants to listen to a schizophrenic tell a story, right? And that's what it felt like when I got to the end of these. There were things missing and things that shouldn't be there, and things that were in the wrong point of view, or all the mistakes.
How did you come to realize that those things were wrong with it? Because I think a lot of people get stuck and can't see that.
Well, if anybody's listened to the first part of this or read it if it goes to writing, this was my third full novel where I got there. And I should add that I never took advanced writing classes, nothing past high school, because I placed out, went to college, went on to become a lawyer. And so I had to beat my head against a wall. And so it was finally just getting rejections or getting pulled in by agents and then the book not quite working and realizing I'm not delivering. I write a lot of pretty words that don't add up necessarily to a great book. And I had started critiquing with a friend of mine named Nikki Lofton, and I really credit her for the turning point because she just brutalized the book that became Finding Harmony and did it correctly and picked up the phone and said, I don't want you to kill yourself because I think this is really good, but I see it, and I need you to see it. And after I talked to her, I did. I cut literally that night, I believe, 15,000 words out of the book, just boom, and forever, threw them away and started again. For writers, that means a whole lot of words.
Yeah.
It's like, gouging your heart.
Yeah. So for you, kind of figuring out how to fix things was a matter of having feedback just on your novel, because I know that I love learning from books and then kind of sleeping on it for a long time, and it'll take me forever to write my first novel because I'm going to do it wrong. No matter all the things I know about how people have done it right, I will do it wrong because I overthink things and I'm going to have to learn it the hard way. But I like to read books on craft and figure out systems, and then there's like this gut feeling you have too. But how do you feel about books on craft?
I love them, and what I also love going to classes on craft, like workshops and conferences, and all of those things helped. bits and pieces of the conferences, bits and pieces of books, bits and pieces of working with other writers, bits and pieces of getting a hardcore critique from a much more advanced writer. But with each, I think that my Achilles heel is impatience. And I'll drop that and run back to writing when really I should stay focused on the learning longer.
Kind of seems to be working okay.
Yeah, but we're talking years later.
Right.
And
So when was that when you started the first one of Leaving Annalise?
what
year?
I want to say that was like 2007.
Okay.
And so it was 7 years ago.
For some reason, I thought you started that for NaNoWriMo.
I picked up that 20,000 words, and 2 years later used it for NaNoWriMo. But in
That
2000,
is totally cheating.
no, well, no, but you've got to understand. I had to look at those words and go, oh my, blankety blank, blank, no, and put them away and use the idea. But what I did the first year in NaNoWriMo was write Going for Kona, the one that I'm working on now. It, in reality, became my first book.
Yeah.
And as I'm rewriting it, I'm seeing that, and it's making me really, really want to vomit. So, anyway.
You're in the middle of it right now. You're on day 2.
I'm on day 2.
That's where you're supposed to be. Right on track.
And if you take in Megan's revisions class, you know that. You have to hate your book in order to be able to make it better. You asked a minute ago, or you pointed out that it was through direct feedback about my work that I really hit the turning point. And I really want to hone in on that, because you can learn and learn and learn and learn and learn, but it is different from doing. And when you do and do and do and do and do, that's called practice. And eventually when you practice enough, you're ready for the learning and the practice to come together. And also, you're ready to find that right person to give you that feedback. You know, for me, it was Nikki on that book.
Right.
But for every book since then, it's been you. Because
so far, we'll see what happens.
That's right. That's right. She's a real pain in the ass. But since then, I've learned that I'm working with somebody that I trust, and I trust to give me quality feedback, not praise. You do give me a lot of praise because you know me.
Because I like it, too. You know, it's not fun for me if I'm working on projects that I don't like. So
True.
It's...
And I can't imagine. I have clients like that, too.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah.
But I really think that that's important for people to know is that learning and practicing are two different things that eventually will start to overlap. But in the beginning,
Are two separate
they're
paths.
two separate paths. And then the intervention of people that can finally make you see it in your own work is just critical. I mean, not everybody's married to a novelist like Stephen King, right? You know, so he can turn to his wife 30 years ago and say, what do you think, honey?
Right.
You know, the rest
she's
of
like,
us.
get it out of the trash can.
Yeah, I love that part. Get it out of the trash can, because it's Carrie and you're going to be famous.
Yeah, this one might actually pay our bills.
You know what's going to be great on this video if you use it is that my husband's coming up the trail out here in Nowheresville at our beautiful writing retreat. And he's got the winter leg look there.
Sorry.
We're doing a video. Do you want to be on our video?
You want a cameo? Little walk on?
Because right now this is an interview.
Oh, that's
Seriously.
awesome. That's great.
Love you. This actually is becoming fairly usable in my opinion. It's
I know,
kind of fun.
I think so too.
So, hit me
So
with the next one.
So that was really the first creative writing thing. I know that you've written a ton, and law students have to, and undergrads have to, but that was really the first fiction that you did was in 2007?
I had done one start and stop kind of novel maybe 5 years before that. I never finished it.
Yeah.
But enough to know that I could at least, get to 50 pages, which that's even a big milestone when you're starting, getting past the first chapter.
I have to trick myself into that. I have to do it all separate pages and separate topics and link them all together secretly so that the front part of my head doesn't know I'm doing it. And then 2 years later, compile it all and realize
You did something.
I have a character, there is a plot, and I've got about 100 pages, which happened last time I was here.
When you sat down with Nicholas Diaz.
Yeah, where was he?
Nicholas is as someone that goes obsessively into writing and into social back and forth, and the twain very rarely shall meet. So he's in a non-social phase. Love him.
I was hoping he'd be at the conference.
He's great. He's
It
great.
was a catalyst for me figuring out some really important stuff last time I was here.
Well, that's great. That's great.
So,
Well, I'd never done creative writing other than, I did what we call here UIL ready writing in high school. I competed where you took a prompt and you wrote for a few hours, and then they subjectively looked at them all and said, "Oh, you win." But that's about
Nice.
it. That's
Yeah.
it.
All right. I was hoping you were going to have some, like, I wrote this terrible poem when I was 8 thing that we could dig up just for fun, but that's okay.
I wrote a really terrible story called The Happiness Recipe when I was in 3rd grade, and I don't know where it is, but it's the most
Your mom has it.
trite, little piece of fluff you've ever read, but it was published in the school paper.
Nice.
Yeah, I got creds.
Yeah. I wrote a poem when I was 7 called Love is Like a Rainbow. It was illustrated, too.
Super. Did you do the illustrations?
Yes.
Oh, that's quality. That ranks up there with Eric's Baby Earthling instrumental writing. I know.
I'll kill you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then, I don't know if my next couple of questions apply. Well, they do, but you answered them, so. I was wondering if there was anyone who let you know that you should really take a harder look at writing and stick with it. It sounds like it was Nikki Lofton.
Yeah, I think before that, because, as I said, that was like 3 full novels in.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it was my husband who encouraged me, and I think he encouraged me just out of blind love, because
he's head over heels in love with you.
Who would know? Who would ever have known? But
surprise!
My parents are surprised, that's for sure. But it takes encouragement, and so there wasn't really anybody that looked at my writing at a very early stage and got me to finish that first novel, other than his encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened after I had finished the first 2 books as far as crappy drafts go, is that I entered Leaving Annalise, the original version, which became Saving Grace and Leaving Annalise. But I entered,
which got very confusing when we were invoicing. I was really confused at one point because you kept changing the name, and then you weren't really wild about me calling them Katie 1, Katie 2, Katie 3.
But I do now. And then we had Conceding Grace, which became Finding Harmony, which for a while was Missing Harmony,
right.
and we even
and then we argued about the title for a long time.
Yeah, Katie 1, 2, 3 works. What happened with Leaving Annalise, which became Katie 2, is that it won a contest. I got brave and entered the Writer League of Texas contest, and the only thing I could see that fit it was romance, and I write really multiple personality disorder genre books, and
it's cross genre.
There you go, cross genre. They don't actually have that category anywhere, I found. So I picked romance because it was romantic, and I found that even though I don't write a formulaic romance, those are good fits for my book, with readers anyway. So it won. Go figure. And if anything, that was a little bit too much validation too early because it was still crap. It was pretty words that didn't make a book, and yet it was.
And how much did you submit? Was it the whole manuscript, or was it a partial?
It was a partial. Most of these
That's
concepts
hard.
are partials, and so you get validation on your pretty words and a synopsis that tells where you're going with the story.
Right.
But there's a lot of books that are pretty good that still aren't worth spending the time to read. And at this point, it was, let's say, it was a little good, but it encouraged me, and I think writing contests are great for that. You get feedback from a judge, you get potentially validation, or at least to know where you are.
Yeah.
Kind of keeps you going.
It's an interesting diagnostic tool, I think, especially for writers who haven't run their work by anybody yet.
Yes.
To get that feedback and hear, like, you're on the level, you're close, you're really way off, and here are the things to look at. Because especially with new writers who maybe don't have the confidence to join a critique group or the personality or inclination to, you can go a really long time having no idea how your work comes across. And a writing contest like the Houston Writers Guild that lets you know sort of in private, it's between you and the judge, how it's coming across. And it's not very much feedback, but it's a hint, and you can go from there.
I found that the feedback that I got from the contests that I entered really made a ton of difference. Even though it's just a little, it made a ton of difference. Yeah. And it's very easy to get confused about where you are in your writing. in one direction or the other. I mean, I think most of us tend to be beating our heads and saying we suck and wailing and flailing, but
We like that.
Exactly. Pain,
Makes us better.
But there's still a significant number of writers that get confused in the opposite direction, and it's a real rude awakening to them that they're not yet as good as they want to become, and yet they need to know that or they'll never become.
Yeah.
It's all about the becoming.
I don't know if they need to know it. But if they want to know it, they need to invite someone to tell them.
At some point, if you want to close the gap, you have to know the gap is there.
Yeah.
So it is somewhat about timing and what we're ready for and ready to hear, and then it not be at a time where it's so demoralizing that we curl up in a fetal position and quit.
And delivered in a way that doesn't do that to you.
Right, constructively.
Which is why finding the right person is really important.
And, I'll see how well I do at it this summer. I'm going to be judging my first contest, and I care a whole lot about other writers and about what positive they can take away for development from my, intervention in their lives, and been doing this critique group at my house for the last year, and it's been really a joy to watch it evolve and it help people, and at the same time you're just always terrified. Is this going to be received and heard and embraced in the way that I meant it? And is this person ready? Are they ready to take another step?
No, it's an exercise in tact and diplomacy.
Yeah.
And honesty.
Right. And then sometimes saying,
have fun with that.
Wrong. Yeah. I was absolutely wrong. You're going somewhere beautiful with this. You rock on.
I think those cover most of my questions. I've got Oh, do you journal or keep a journal for each novel, or write anything that's not intended for publication? Do you have like a secret stash of poems somewhere that we don't know about?
I have a secret stash of notes, lots and lots of really, really disjointed notes, and then I have version after version after version of taking those notes and taking them to a new place, usually synopsis. The process for me these days, now that I've figured out, I think, how to at least go through the process efficiently and end up with something that reflects what I wanted it to be, even if it's still crap and needs a lot more work, is that I spend a lot of time just batting ideas around with my husband, because he's really good at saying, no, that'll never work, and coming up with creative ideas.
Or don't kill that man.
Yeah, exactly. Every male character. I think we love him. Don't kill that man. Honey, they're not all you.
But sometimes they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're going to meet a demise.
My husband actually woke up from a dream one night and was punching in the air. And
Bart.
he said I was having a fight with Bart, and I said, you're not Nick, and it isn't real. So I think he identifies a whole lot. Maybe that original autobiographical novella kind of cemented it in his mind.
Yeah.
But after we go through the note, the note generation phase of really talking it through, and I mean hours and hours per book, then I sit down, I, in essence, journal it, and then I will put it into an outline and then a synopsis, so that I try to get into the voice before I start to write, and try to be able to write it through 15 pages once to see if it's going to hang together, because I've learned that it really is not much fun when you have to rewrite, the last 2/3 of a book because your plot didn't hang together. It's really feels like, death. So, but I do sometimes write down notes that nobody ever sees. I have a story that I wrote last week that it just didn't come out the way I wanted, and so I just trashed it. But I trashed it into being saved, because who knows, the idea may come in handy later. And I do lots of note-taking of quirky things I see. I like to, don't you do that too?
Oh, yeah.
You capture that moment, I've got one that I'm treasuring and I'm hoping to use in the next series, the one about Emily. And it's about a friend who was living in a housing community that had rules about firearms, and he was cleaning his gun, and it accidentally discharged and took out part of his hand and killed their refrigerator. His hand was ultimately fine. The refrigerator didn't make it, and it ended up to me, this guy was from Louisiana, this has the makings for me for a beautiful, one of those beautiful moments that you don't necessarily have to drive the plot.
Right.
They're just kind of a little cherry on top as you
Yeah.
go along, and I collect those.
Yeah, those, like, you can't make this up moments.
Exactly.
I always wonder about those.
Or the ones where you look out and it's nighttime in Chicago and you see all of the taxis driving by with their lights on top, and it looks like sharks going through the water with their fins, and you think, someday I want to see that.
Yeah.
And I write. I haven't needed to yet, but I will someday. Anything that you want to share for posterity?
No way.
No way. Absolutely
No.
not.
I like to stay buttoned up.
It's a good thing to
What
be.
do you want to know anything from me? I kind of owe you now. I just plumbed your brain in the middle of your writing day.
What do I want to know? Well, I was very interested to hear how you felt after having judged a contest about
Tired.
emotionally just wrung out. But it also seemed to me you felt like it made you go back and re-examine your ability to quickly analyze books and provide what could be a real value-add service to clients, that ability to hone in on issues. I mean, you do a great manuscript consult. I've done it with you now a bazillion times.
Yeah.
But
to do them really quick like that was new for me.
it's a skill.
It is, and it's interesting. I've resisted having a real system for doing manuscript critiques. And because I like to approach each book on its own merits. And there are areas that I'm going to hit every time. I'm going to talk about character development and setting and description and all of those main elements of fiction. But I don't have a form that I fill out.
Yeah.
I just really am dealing with that book and how it speaks to me as a reader. And I don't claim to know everything about it and be the final word on it. It's just, this is how this book is going to come across to some readers. And as a professional reader, it's going to be communicated to you in a more coherent way, probably.
What I've liked about working with you on critique is that, that you're very open to follow-up conversation.
Oh yeah, that's the most important part.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So if we don't understand what you mean, then we can explore it further. A mistake I think I see writers make a lot in the process of accepting feedback is they try to defend what they've written. And what I've learned in working with you is that if I'm worrying about defending what I'm writing, I'm missing the whole point that you read it all and didn't get that. And if you read it all and didn't get that, it really doesn't matter.
It's not on the page.
It's not on the page.
For at least some readers.
Exactly.
And I may not be, if we all had the same take on any given book, there would not be, 1,000 reviews of Grapes of Wrath on Goodreads or Amazon. I don't know how many there are. I made that up.
Yeah.
But we would all agree,
Right.
I don't profess to know how this book is going to come across to everyone. But you asked me and you gave me money, so you get my opinion. And that's why the beginning conversations with a writer are really important. To see, are we really a good match? Do we see things the same way, at least, a little bit?
Do they like being stalked?
Yeah.
Inside joke. But yeah, and then knowing that writing is an art, not a science, but yet that you can get better at your art. You can learn things that help you with your art. You can study how it impacts others and decide whether or not what you're creating is true to what you're trying to achieve. And that helps. And through that conversation, or the ones that we've had about it, it helps me come to grips with that. Because, as you know, there are times where you make suggestions, because that's all a consult is. It's ultimately the book of the person that writes it.
Right.
They want to keep it,
yeah.
really crappy book. They can.
And when you're self-publishing, every, fixed comma is also a suggestion. And so it's ultimately kind of on you.
Yeah, exactly.
If you decide not to. And there's room for error as well. So.
Do you know what I'll confess to you, what I do with your final line edit?
Do you?
I accept all. I accept all, and then I go back and read it. Because I feel like I just paid for someone to work really hard on this.
Oh,
and
but
the
then
first
do you
few
go back
times,
and undo some things?
sometimes I'll go back, but I won't go back. I won't do it with the track changes. I'll just go back, and if I find something, especially
It doesn't
something
sound
commented
right.
that doesn't sound right, then I'll mess with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll send that to my betas, a lot of whom are writers, but also readers,
Yeah.
and let them be the ones to say, that felt awkward,
Yeah.
or it didn't sound like you.
Okay.
But
that makes sense. I thought you were saying like you didn't
I don't
go
just
through
hit
it all the
publish.
way. Okay, because we haven't I haven't edited one of yours in a year and a half now, so I may have a slightly different process
9
right
months,
now.
loser. A year, loser.
Okay.
Last summer.
I don't know what I was doing before, but now I always send the marked up manuscript and then a clean copy that's got everything accepted with the comments in it.
That's what you were doing with me, and I love that because I can just go through. To me, the comments are this part needs a harder I. So I'll go through and address all the comments, save them to a saved version of the clean copy. I'll keep the marked up one, the really bloody one, for reference, and then I'll read it simultaneously with the betas reading it. And and then we're looking for, did anything give anybody pause? And now, we'd done 5 or 6 books together before I started doing that.
Right.
But we'd reached a point where we understood each other enough that I trusted that you knew my voice.
Well, and I learned a lot from your process and changed how I do some things too. Because knowing that and that's where that follow-up and that relationship with the client makes such a difference. Finding out how you go through it and respond to it and who you share it with makes a big difference in how I present it to you. I want it to be as easy as possible because if you're hung up on, the structure of the thing or then you're not dealing with the story stuff and I'm causing you too much trouble.
Yeah, those marked up versions, they're critical, but they're also overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
I try
it's
to
also
mark now the points where I make a change, in track changes, that's significant that I know you're going to want to look at.
Yeah.
That's like maybe iffy.
Yeah, mark it with a comment.
Exactly.
Yeah, because what happens too is that I find, this unique relationship in indie publishing between an editor and an author. The author has the ability to reintroduce errors, and really in traditional publishing, you've got a team keeping that from happening. And for me, that team is that I use this team of beta readers right at the end to weed out all the mistakes that 2 humans can't find, you and me. And then I use earlier critique partners and then you on a consult to work on story. But I wanted, there was one thing that was important to me to get out that I think is so cool about working with you, is if you can leave your ego at the door as much as possible, author working with editor, critiquer after they've delivered the critique, and you can try to disembody yourself and just look at the story, and this is not entirely possible for either party, but you can work really hard at it, then it's okay to say, I totally hear you, Megan Pinson, and I'm not doing that.
Right. And it's okay for me to hear that and not be like,
bugs attacking
my work.
Yeah.
It's not about me or you. It's about this piece at that point. And hopefully both of us can be divorced enough from it to let it go and see how it stands in the world.
Right.
And it's hard because we've both at that point, you've put in
invested.
much more work than I have, but I've also put in quite a bit of work.
And professional credibility.
Yeah, and my name's on the line too. Let's close because I have to go to the airport soon. And,
okay. I could talk all day.
I know, me too. We like this stuff.
That's right.
Let's talk about errors.
Okay.
How do you feel as an author when I send you something that you find out later, after it's up on Amazon, has typos in it? How do you deal with that? Because that's happened to both of us.
Yes.
And it makes me, thinking about it right now, physically ill.
You're turning red. Your chest is turning red. Her chest is turning red. Well, it makes me feel like getting the book and making the changes, for starters. I can't stand it when I hear people say they're tired of working with it and they leave something up knowing there's a problem. I mean, in the world that we live in, with print on demand and ebook sales, errors can be corrected.
Right.
Fix them, damn it. But how do I feel about it? I feel like that when we reach a point between an editor and an author, that we've found all that we can find, that I should still expect for a book that's 100,000 words, 10 or 20 more, typos or errors in there because no two humans can conceptually hold those, what is 100,000 words is 500, 600,000 characters in your
head. A lot of
and
pages.
all these pages. And so I take it as it's my responsibility. Ultimately, my name's the one going on the book, and that my final stage should be trying to find those last errors with new eyes. And that's why I put my beta team together. I have 20 readers. Not all of them can read every time. Most of them do every time. And I think you and I both found that most of the time what they do is very valuable. We've had some funny experiences too where, they make you want to tear your hair out. But there have been some amazing catches. Everything from there's an extra space between these words to misspellings to once one caught a name being different at the beginning and the end of the book on a ring inscription, and I'd have never caught it. Never. And it's just, you become blind to it at a point. My name goes on the book. It's my responsibility to get
my
the
name's
errors
all
out.
over your blog.
I don't keep you a secret.
No, and that's actually made me a better editor because I think a lot of editors are traditionally have just been in the background and unnamed, and authors didn't want to admit that they worked with editors because it kind of meant that maybe they couldn't do it all themselves.
Yeah.
And that's changed so dramatically in the last few years that it's really, it's nerve-wracking, but to put my name on it. But if I've gone through a critique with you, or two, for the second one, right?
Leading and Lace, we did too.
Because it changed so much.
Yep.
And then a copy edit, and then post-editing cleanup, and all of these things. My name should be on that. I'm responsible for those things, and I've accepted that I will miss a few things. I strive for perfection every time.
Right.
But if and when I find out about typos that go through later on, how I keep from going into the fetal position is when I read traditionally published books, I'll circle the typos in them, and I'll put a little tick mark in the front cover, just so I know, okay, you're not the only person.
So what's the lowest number you've ever had
of
a traditionally published book? But there is always one in there.
Yeah.
I've never come with a zero. And I do the same kind of feeling. I mean, some have a lot more than others, but
I don't do it to every book, but
it's just when you need it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you and I were just talking about that while I don't read reviews on Amazon, my husband does. And this morning he pointed out that someone yesterday left
I responded to that.
You responded to that review, but left one of, frankly, only 2 bad reviews out of 176 that I've seen anywhere on Saving Grace. And was interesting to me because, as you and I talked about, they were pointing out editing errors. And that is the reason it's interesting is because I'm willing to bet that particular book only has 1 or 2 in it. But what I think people sometimes confuse with it is they don't jive with the author's style, stylistic choices.
Yeah.
And then that becomes, it's not editing. That's validly finding that this writer isn't your cup of tea.
Right.
And so it was interesting. And I know you and I've had a debate on that today about what was driving that. But I will say, I don't think that there can be many actual errors left because we have the luxury when we indie publish of pulling that sucker down and changing it. And my friends that are traditionally published, they don't have that kind of control, and if it's up there they just have to grit their teeth and bear it.
That's hard. Yeah.
So
I think you have a lot more control over this, and it's possible that it goes through more editing passes than a lot of traditionally published books do at this point too.
It really may, especially when you consider the team we pulled together and really use it and use that team to make it better. So
at this point, you know who to send it to for grammatical stuff and punctuation, who to send it to for story, and you've got a very nicely greased machine going right now.
Well, they are wonderful. I will say that, and I think that
don't tell anyone who their names are.
I know people keep saying, "Will you send my book to your betas?" And I'll say, I will ask my betas if they're interested in reading somebody else's book. I'd be happy to do that for you. How many do you think you'll get for me? I have no idea whether anyone will be interested in your book. I've only and this is only.
You put so much work
I'm not
into
good.
training them to know what you're looking for, and I mean, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Like the relationship you have with me, it's not quite as intense, but it's the same thing, back and forth, figuring out how to talk to each other so that this is really useful endeavor and not just, going to waste your time looking through the same 200 pages, 300.
Right.
Over and
I
over.
never have made my betas read more than once.
Yeah.
I mean it when I ask them to do
No,
it.
I mean you.
Oh, okay.
When you get it back. Because if
yeah,
you've
yeah,
got 7 betas on it, you're going through that manuscript 7 times for them, at least. And then thinking about each point and then emailing with me about them.
That's right. That's the thing the betas don't know. I take the changes that aren't just a flat out typo, and we talk about it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, again, it is style. And there's a decision to be made instead of just a correction.
And then I have to tell you where it is in the Chicago Manual of Style.
And I have to ignore
how
you.
much I'm going to budge on it. All right. This interview has gotten so long. Nobody's going to watch this whole thing.
I
but
think
I
what
feel
we
really
have
good
to
about
do is we have to cut it in pieces and publish it serially because it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's good.
And
Thank you